So we have recently gained a bit more clarity on what the occupation on Gaza would actually mean. We have Netanyahu did an interview with Fox, and I wanted to sort of like go around the table first and ask people what they think Netanyahu said. Then I realized in the title I have exactly what he said, so it won't be much of a surprise, but I think it still would be interesting to do so before we go into interview itself. We'll just play about 2 minutes of it. Welcome to the reality show. Today we'll talk about the occupation of Gaza that is happening and what it would actually mean. But joining me today are Marco, Richard, and Michael Kaufman. And before we go listen to Netanyahu, I would just go around the table and we've talked about the occupation of Gaza for many times. So I would just ask Marco, what do you think should be sort of like the future of Gaza? What should be the Israeli policy without commenting on what it's looking like it's going to be?
Well, first of all, occupation of Gaza, it's actually been terrorists trying to destroy Israel. That's the only occupation that Gaza has ever done, and probably will ever see. I mean, yeah, we've been arguing on this channel for since the very beginning of October the 7th that the only way to remove a threat is to get rid of it. And how do you get rid of it? You decisively get into Gaza and literally eliminate the problem that Israel hasn't done that. They've been dragging their feet now for a year. Okay, they've been distracted by Hezbollah and Iran, but there's no excuse why Gaza is still there. Troop and people have been moved north to the north, then to the south, then again to the north. It's like, what the hell are you doing? If you want to win, you have to look after the interests of your own people, including the soldiers. So, it would be nice to see a decisive move towards dealing with Hamas once and for all. And of course, releasing the hostages if you can.
Richard?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and Marcus says get into Gaza. I think hover over Gaza and dispatch Gaza that way is really part of the solution. At least keep dispatching parts of it until there is the surrender necessary to return as many hostages as possible, and of course to actually end the Hamas occupation, as Marco put it there, which I think is accurate. We know that Hamas is a death cult that has wrapped itself in the disguise of victimhood, and that victimhood has been, that disguise of victimhood has convinced the West to support it endlessly because the West is always, under the banner of altruism, looking for victims to, regardless of whatever nature they've got, regardless of whatever their claim to victimhood is, regardless of how they arrived at that victimhood, they're happy to lap it up and happy to prostrate themselves before victimhood, which is what's been happening so far. Now, to counter that, you needed to have acted far sooner than this because that problem was already that horse has bolted already, and you're not going to bring the West on board at this point doing what is necessary. But you're also not going to bring the West on board doing what the West wants either, because that isn't actually going to end the conflict either, and it's certainly not going to make Israel a safer place to live in, which should be the absolute goal. And certainly, security perimeters and all that kind of, half-assed talk, things still fly over security perimeters. And you need to ensure that this is a proper, safe solution for Israel's work within Israel, and that sirens and bunkers and shelters within homes and buildings are a thing of the past, not a necessity for every day. And the only way to do that is to be wiping out more and more areas until there is the surrender and the understanding that is, that this is serious and it's over and you've lost.
Michael, any opening thoughts about what should happen in Gaza?
Well, I completely agree that, right, Gaza has been occupied by a terrorist organization. The West likes to pretend that it's a well-functioning society that just happens to have a bunch of tunnels underneath it. It's not a well-functioning society. It's a suicidal, homicidal society that loves to teach Muslim Arab kids to kill Jews. And the unfortunate thing is, I'm not sure occupation is even the right word. I don't know why we would call this an occupation. We have to go in there and annihilate Hamas. And if it requires going door to door, and to do that, we've said on this show before, that's pretty clear that's what we have to do. Or we have to have a ceasefire and then effectively surrender. And we've tried many, many times, like idiots, to negotiate with Hamas. First, we had Blinken, the prime idiot under Biden and Harris, do it and was shocked that Hamas wasn't negotiating in good faith. And then we had Witkoff, who we all had better hopes for, who ended up coming to a dead end again, except that Macron offered them a state at the same time, whatever it means, Macron offering anybody a state. But we have to go in there and get the hostages out. There's absolutely no two ways about it. If we do not get the hostages out, if we are not returned one way or the other, then every terrorist organization in the entire world is going to adopt this new method of just simply taking hostages, letting all the people under them to be destroyed, and just hold out until the other side capitulates. And this is not a policy. This is a strategy for suicide, not a strategy for victory. So you have to go in there. It's a shame we're still talking about this 2 years ago, because I think on this show we were talking about it in the first couple of months after October 7th. But as usual, people think a leopard can change their spots, and people think that terrorists will behave rationally somehow. And so here we are 2 years later with nearly 500 dead Israeli soldiers dealing with the Gaza problem, and a lot of terrorized people. And we're back to the same thing, which is Hamas doesn't really care if everyone in Gaza is dead, as long as they get to have the last word.
Yeah, and with that, let's listen to the Prime Minister about his plans for Gaza.
Will Israel take control of all of Gaza?
We intend to, in order to assure our security, remove Hamas there, enable the population to be free of Gaza, and to pass it to civilian governance. That is not Hamas and not anyone advocating the destruction of Israel. That's what we want to do.
All right, so we can stop at this. First part, I want to play a little bit later. Okay, so the occupation that is being talked about, and I guess we can discuss sort of the war occupation. I think oftentimes people view occupation with like negative connotation, while I don't think necessarily it is. It's something you do when you take over a part of territory and it's not yet full part of your country. You occupy it, you have it under military rule instead of sort of like normal sort of civilian law or normal way of dealing with a population. Now, he officially stated, and this has been said today, that the occupation will be short term. I think I've seen some reports that it could be 4 or 5 months, but this is just a start, so who knows how long it could take. But basically the end goal being handing it over. Now, and this is what I found interesting, handing it over to an Arab group that doesn't want to get rid of the Israeli state. Now, Marco, which group is that?
Yeah, that's a good question, isn't it? I mean, honestly, I wish Netanyahu stopped dilly-dallying and trying to play the politicians. And I wish he went in, saw the next election, just accept the fact you probably lost the next election. So just do the right thing for once. Just make your legacy doing the right thing, not being a politician. To be honest, I mean, occupation, as you said, is a negative word usually, but it's a positive word when you occupy university in order to support the jihadis. That's usually a positive way. I wouldn't call it occupation, to be honest. It's only occupation in the sense that you cannot have a native government in Gaza that looks after its own affair. You have to have Israel overseeing whatever goes on, making sure that children are not brainwashed and educated towards anti-Semitism, you have to make sure that you haven't got a market, whether open or underground, literally, of weapons and stuff that is going to be used to attack Israel again. And frankly, going into Gaza, well, you got missiles. You don't need lots of missiles to knock down a house and to move through. I mean, just bulldoze the whole thing, move along and bulldoze the whole thing. You're giving them enough chances. I mean, since the disengagement 20 years ago, when Gaza was left by the Israelis and handed over to the Gazans, to the Arabs. What have we seen? Well, Israel being attacked constantly, a terrorist state being built, infrastructure being built, weapon being built, and all Israel did was just putting up with the attacks from Israel, with the rockets, sorry, with Gaza, from Gaza, putting up with the international condemnation every time they were trying to defend themselves, and just effectively waiting for international sympathy and collaboration. Waiting, I don't know for what or for whom, because they're not coming. I mean, we've seen it quite clearly how stupid the leaders of our governments are, how hell bent into this engagement, diplomatic engagement. You can never call out a dictator and decide to either put total sanction against them and total ostracize them, because you always have to be engaged with them. Why? Who knows? This kind of policy works so well until now, hasn't it? So what you have to do, deal with Hamas in a decisive way, one for all. If you try and do halfway work, if you're trying to, again, to appeal to international community, to not to be seen to be too hard on the Gazans, well, what are you going to get? You're going to get, if perhaps not Hamas, or by another brand that's going to rebuild exactly the same machine, because you haven't rooted out the problem. And the problem is the culture in Gaza, what these people represent, what these people want, and what ultimately the value is, which right now is death and destruction, and especially the destruction of Jews.
It's a phantom solution, isn't it?
So sorry, I just wanted to quickly jump in, because I tried to quickly search up occupation just so we kind of understand. And this is what Google gave me: the action, state, or period of occupying or being occupied by military force. What kind of definition is that? I'm looking for the definition of occupation, and it gives me occupation twice in the definition. But then I looked up Cambridge, and I think a situation in which an army or group moves into and takes control of a place. So I think that's why it sort of fits. And even the way Marco said it, right? It would require changing the education system in Gaza. And it wouldn't be sort of like a 4-month period. It would be like a decade-long period. And if the end goal is then leaving them to their own devices or integrating them into broader Israeli society, as it was with the Arabs after the war, then that decision can be made. But would absolutely be sort of like a different state of affairs. Like something definite needs to happen. Which I don't think will happen with any other Arab country, even if you pick the best one that would have some interest in the radicalizing Palestinians. The fact is, organizations like UNRWA that have radicalized the Palestinian population or played a role in that would most likely return, even if Israel wouldn't want it. Richard?
Yeah. And I was just making the point that it's a phantom solution as proposed at the moment, isn't it? Seeking out some kind of Arab group that doesn't, call for the destruction of Israel is looking for shadows. It's an imaginary group you're looking for. It's as imaginary as the two-state solution working. It's as imaginary as Hamas waking up tomorrow suddenly enlightened by reason. It's just kidding yourself, isn't it, that it exists? And of course, an Arab force not calling for the destruction of Israel, what? Not calling for it on paper, not calling for it officially, not calling for it on flags and videos, or just saying they're not calling for it. Is that enough for you? Is that enough to convince you that you can hand over the keys, hand over the control? this has to take time in order for it to be ensured to be working because of those long-term effects that are needed, such as the education system. So making sure that not only the structures for a working country exist, but the people who run them, control them, and are going to grow them in the future, aren't going to revert the second you've left, which is obviously exactly what happened in 2005. And until you've set those things in motion, then you're kidding yourself. You cartoon land.
Michael, what group is that's gonna have or turn like this is not even about being at peace with Israel, right? We are not talking about maybe Egypt on paper being at peace with Israel. We are talking about the Arab group that would supposedly turn the Palestinian population into a population that would, at the very least, not want to actively destroy the Israeli state right now.
Well, you could pick, 3 or 4 of the really well-established Middle Eastern democracies to do that. And you could pick the Islamic ones, and maybe you guys that are listening can Google and follow our ChatGPT and figure out which great countries in the Middle East or, in Asia, like the Persians could take over and try to implement, if, as you say, if not democracy, at least a country whose charter has been changed, call it from the current one, which is Hamas calling for the destruction of Israel, and the Palestinian Authority, by the way, that other great entity that is often served up as an example of something that's more civilized. Obviously, it's a tragedy. The Palestinian Authority is essentially as corrupt, not as powerful, and hasn't received as much international aid. But they're no different than Hamas. They're just terrorists by any other name. And obviously, I'm being cynical here. This is. I will turn it around and say, Netanyahu is serving up a pile of crap. It is very clear that the goal, first of all, and why Israel can't state this, and I don't understand, has to be to rescue the hostages, dead or alive. It has to be to get them out of there, and it has to get to Hamas surrendering. If Hamas is so incredibly destructive to itself and its people that they require annihilation, just like cancer cells do, by the way. You can't leave a few cancer cells in. Those few cancer cells don't agree to live happily with the host. If you leave them in, they come back and they kill the host. And they're often more resistant, by the way, than the cancer you took out. So this is a cancer that has to be eradicated. And we have to try to get the hostages out. Clearly, Hamas has done a very nice job moving these last 49 or 50 or 52 or whatever the number is, hostages around very well. And probably Israel knows where they are. They seem to. And they're probably in Gaza City or surrounding areas where they're talking about. And Israel has to figure out a way to get in there without having all the hostages killed. That said, and let's be blunt, if all the hostages are going to die over this, and the result will be Hamas being eradicated, then that has to be the policy, because this is a cancer that is going to come back and kill Israel. And the argument that some other terrorist group is going to replace them is idiotic. It's like saying, if you live another year, some other thing is going to kill you. It's true that we all die, we all have something, but it doesn't mean when the issues present themselves, you suddenly give up. By the way, there are socialized medicine countries that basically say if you get certain diagnoses after a certain age, we do give up. But as an American, we don't subscribe to that. We do believe in actually fighting. If the patient wants to fight, you fight. And I think we have to fight here. We need to eradicate Hamas. We needed to do it on October 8th. We frankly needed to do it on October 6th. And we did it. And we are all paying the price for this.
Let's listen to a little bit more of Netanyahu.
We want to liberate ourselves and liberate the people of Gaza from the awful terror of Hamas. And you were in the Gaza Strip today. You met Palestinians who are fighting Hamas because finally they see that they have a future. They can rid themselves of this awful tyranny that not only holds our hostages, but holds 2 million Palestinians in Gaza hostage. That's got to end.
Are you saying?
So when I heard this, I'm like, you know what? Fuck this guy. This guy is the fault of well, because of how much hate there is on Netanyahu for wrong reasons. I almost don't want to attack him. But the fact is, he is saying exactly what makes this war impossible. The fact that you frame this as Palestinians are hostages of their government. No, they are supportive of Hamas. They want Hamas. They want back Marwan Barghouti, the orchestrator of the first Intifada. They want to continue with terrorism. They want to continue violence. If there was an idea that simply you get rid of Hamas and then nothing bad will happen, Palestinians will be peaceful, then they would have been peaceful before Hamas. Why would they ever become like Palestinian violence precede Hamas? Palestinian violence precede these organizations. It started because the Arab population wanted and the Arab nations wanted to get rid of Israel. This wasn't imposed on them. They imposed it on the organizations that are part of them. So, I mean, this kind of rhetoric is what makes anything impossible. If you say that, and if this was true, then yeah, it kind of makes sense, right? You just get rid of Hamas and then you throw it to any Arab group that wants to take care of them. But it's not the case. Marco?
I really don't understand at this point, nearly 2 years from the start of the war, a war which has been started by the innocent Gazans, isn't it? We're still at the stage where Netanyahu is effectively trying to present himself as a good guy by saying, "Oh, I don't want to hurt the Gazans. I'm just there to liberate them." It's like, what the hell are you talking about? We are literally here in the West at the stage when baboons are chanting death to the IDF. We are at the stage where Jews and even citizens who happen to look like Jewish people are just attacked, constantly in danger. Israeli people can't go abroad without even attacked. Israeli companies are attacked and disrupted all the time here in the West. I mean, at what point will you decide, hang on a second, I don't need the smiles from Macron or the other imbecile of Keir Starmer or the other cretin in Germany or whoever other imbecile decides to scowl at Israel because it defends itself. You have effectively the support of the only country that matters, United States. So get in, get home with what you need to do. And, as Richard pointed out, you don't even have to get in, just do it from the sky. Why risking the life of more Israelis in order to, save the Gazans? Well, the Gazans can save themselves. They've chosen not to save themselves, so let them go down with the ship. By the way, the ship they built, the ship they've been driving, and the ship they deserve to die in, frankly.
Yeah. I mean, this argument that you should do it for the people of Gaza is just sticks in the craw, doesn't it? I mean, there's a reason that all of the surrounding countries don't want to take Gazans in. All of those Arab countries that supposedly are now fit to run the place that don't want Gazans in their own territory either. I mean, it's just ludicrous. Everything I hear about the reasons why this shouldn't happen is about humanitarian risks, for example, which just means the risk to Gazans and terrorists in Hamas of not being fed and not being allowed to continue the terror which they've inflicted upon Israel. I hear about the diplomatic risks to Israel, the fact that, as if the world isn't already wagging its finger endlessly at Israel and accusing it of occupying, and has been accusing it of occupying since 2005. Well, this will be the ultimate irony if they actually do occupy it properly, and then control it properly and manage a form of peace properly. But we'll see whether that's possible or not. But nowhere do they talk about the military risk, the risk to all of those soldiers and reservists. Who, if you're going to send them door to door, you're going to send many to their deaths. Many to their deaths via booby traps. You're going to send many to their deaths via, sniper fire and via the attack of Hamas and of opportunist Gazans wherever they can. And of course, they know they get paid for it as well, don't they? They get paid to slay, IDF and Jews wherever they can. So you certainly don't hear about the military risks. And you don't hear about the risk to Israel's security of not doing this, which is why we're in this situation in the first place. In it because of October the 7th, in it long before then because of the threat that Israel has constantly been under. So those are the reasons to do it, not for the Gazans.
Yeah, and to go to you, Michael, I mean, something Netanyahu said is you've met Palestinians who want to get rid of Hamas, and you mentioned earlier about sort of like the terrorist organization replacing this terrorist organization, and something I found really interesting is this is something we've heard a lot. I think Piers Morgan continuously repeats it, like, oh, if you kill somebody in Gaza, then their whole family is against you. But apparently, when Hamas kills their own people, their family doesn't turn against Hamas. It only works against Israel somehow. But yeah, I mean, Michael, where are all these Palestinians who want to get rid of Hamas?
Yeah, this is baloney. This is a great lie that we keep getting taught. And like you said, you can hear from the experts, you can hear from the journalists. All this is true, and then you can say, okay, prove it. And what we've seen is that Hamas has gotten destroyed, not destroyed enough, but they've been destroyed, and their leaders have all been killed. And a few pop up here and there, but they're nowhere near the leaders that used to be there. And yet we don't see any large-scale rebellions at all. We don't see anything, frankly. And all we do, and we had a little bit of a tiff on the last time I was on, because apparently only 62% or 57% of Gazans now support Hamas versus 82% 6 months ago or something. So that's taken, the fact that it's gone down by 1.25 is taken as some kind of proof that Gazans are really okay and they get it now. It's utter ridiculousness. This whole argument is absurd. The other option, and what's beautiful about the critics of all of this stuff, is that they provide no other solution. All they say is that every solution is bad. And actually, I love Marco's solution, because the right way to do this is to forget about the Gazan citizens and bomb the living crap out of whoever's there and stop worrying about civilians and take care of your own people. Israel, and I have a lot of fights with a lot of Israelis about this, they are completely bipolar on this issue. They cannot get their heads around killing so-called at least let's call them non-combatants, non-direct combatants, because they're certainly not innocent civilians. And they just can't get their heads around it. And no matter how many dead Israeli soldiers there are, in 1 minute they can be weeping for the last 2 or 3 kids that were killed or maimed by the Gazans, by the Hamas, mostly Hamas, some Gazans. And then at the next moment, they're willing to put their kids up into the army to go do these ridiculous house-to-house raids, of which we know we're going to lose people. And they just don't get it. And you're right, this posturing towards trying to be the good guy, stop. And I had a fight with one of my family members about this. Stop trying to understand why everybody hates us, hates the Jews, hates the Israelis so much. Stop it. It's like trying to figure out why a mass murderer committed mass murder. Do we really think that we learned enough in the last 200 years when we've started studying mass murderers that we have prevented new mass murderers? Do we think the insights that we supposedly gain from understanding, and we don't understand any of this stuff. Some people's wiring is just screwed up, period. As a doctor, I certainly wasn't taught anything in my psychiatry classes that gave me great insight into why people are psychopaths or how to prevent it. And nobody knows how to rewire the brain yet. So we're not going to do it. These people running Hamas are psychopaths. They are suicidal, homicidal animals. They are no better. And anyone who supports them is no better. And we ought to get it. But, Netanyahu doesn't help matters, because he obviously thinks we're all stupid. And he obviously decided, and they sat around the room with their press people and thought, what baloney excuse can we come up with which will be palatable to everyone? And apparently it was that we're actually doing this for the poor Gazans.
We have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so Thank you so much. She says, well, first she says regular super chat is not working, which makes me really scared. Hopefully YouTube will fix that. But she's been a member for 38 months, so this is the special kind of super chat she gets. Thank you so much. And she's asking, is there anyone good to replace Netanyahu? Would Israel be better or worse if he was gone? Well, Netanyahu should resign just on the face of the fact that this happened under his watch. Is there somebody better? I mean, in theory, yes. I think somebody, and I'm trying to, somebody like Moshe Feiglin would, especially on the Gaza issue, would be much better. And even when it comes to sort of some of his domestic politics, and I believe he is intending to run. We had him on our show. People can look up Moshe Feiglin, Ayn Rand Center UK, and they'll be able to find the conversations we did with him. But the fact is, when it comes, you have to deal with the fact that you are not only electing a president like in America, you are electing a bunch of parties that will have to decide on a prime minister. Now, when it comes to the next election, I believe Netanyahu is still leading the polls, but Bennett, or sort of Naftali Bennett, sort of like a new party that is coming out, is sort of neck and neck with him. But even if that happens, it would either mean another inclusion of Arab parties, which, surprise, surprise, they won't really have a good policy when it comes to Gaza, or it would include a bunch of leftist parties like the New Democrats that got created, or sort of these kind of things. So again, that might be better, but the reality of Israeli politics right now is very unfortunate that in some ways Netanyahu is probably the best guy you have, which is sad. Michael, as somebody who spent some time in Israel, do you follow the Israeli politics, and do you think, what do you think of the bonus question? Is there anyone good to replace Netanyahu?
Well, there's Lieberman also, who's a little bit more hardcore and but more rational, and probably more interested in Israel rather than Netanyahu, who's clearly run this whole thing for himself. And I say that because there's no excuse for this war to have dragged out for 2 years. Iran was defeated in days. Frankly, it was defeated in like literally 2 days, and then the rest was just icing on the cake in preparation for Trump to send in the cavalry, which is kind of a joke because the stage had already been cleared. They needed the stage cleared for these long range bombers and these amazing munitions, but they took out Hezbollah in one of the most remarkable pager operations ever, and they continue to beat up Hezbollah on a literally daily basis. There are Hezbollah terrorists, big shot terrorists are rearming in southern Lebanon. Really surprising given how Macron has given his personal promise to not allow Hezbollah back in, but Hezbollah is not listening to Macron. There is nobody standing up, really. I mean, Lieberman has got some chutzpah. You're right. Bennett is getting some interest. But the problem is that the center and the left, and I think I've said on the show before, in Israel, the left is really what most places would call the center. The far left in Israel has been decimated. I mean, the continued wars and the continued death. The far left in Israel wanted to appease the Palestinians, and they wanted a Palestinian state. And they really have been squashed because they live in an alternate reality. So the center left and the center in Israel has failed to put up a compelling person. And there's just no real definitive opposition to what we all think should be a fairly straightforward and easy, rational approach to what Israel needs. It's just not that complicated, despite what all the pundits and experts would love to have you believe. It's just not. Security, number one. It goes life, number one, liberty, and then pursuit of happiness. If you lose your life, there's no liberty or pursuit of happiness. It ain't that hard. And what Netanyahu has failed to provide, even till now, is real security. And I'll just add that there's still, once a week, there's still a missile from Yemen coming into Tel Aviv, and 2 million people in Tel Aviv running to shelters at 3 a.m. in the morning because of a frickin' missile from Yemen from these idiots. Backwater, I think guerrillas was a term that Marco Richard used beautifully. We just had another missile launch from Gaza in the last half hour with sirens going off in some of the communities near the Gaza border. There's no excuse for that for an army that has taken out Hezbollah and Iran. None. If Israel wanted to win this thing, they would have won it.
We have a super chat from Mary Mary. Thank you so much. She says super chat is working here. It's good to know. And a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. He says great show. So super chats do seem to be working. So thank you for that. Now you talked about sort of like the opposition, and the current opposition leader Yair Lapid has commented on this situation. He said, "I told Netanyahu the occupation of Gaza is a very bad idea. You can only take such a move if the majority of the nation is behind you. The people of Israel are not interested in this war. We will pay prices that are too great." And he goes on to further to talk about it. And in some ways, I mean, he is doing it for wrong reasons. He's been appeasing pretty much since the start, and has been continuously calling for a ceasefire, has been continuously calling for Israel to basically surrender to Hamas. I think he even offered, I'm not sure if it was like official, but basically if the Itamar Ben-Gvir's party or Smotrich's party would leave the government, that Yair Lapid has said that he would hold Netanyahu's government if he commits to a ceasefire. So even that deal was sort of on the table. So yeah, Yair Lapid is definitely an appeaser. But in some ways, I was thinking about it earlier, I think on Tuesday, when first time it was being talked about that Netanyahu is considering an occupation, is the fact that if this is going to be just short-term occupation where your goal is to get out and simply give it back to Arabs, then on some ways you are just risking the lives of IDF soldiers for almost nothing. I mean, what is really going to change? Nothing's going to, even if you get rid of Hamas. One, you still have Palestinian Islamic Jihad there. Maybe that is sort of like included, that we are getting rid of all terrorist organizations and not just Hamas. But the fact is that, yeah, if you don't change the population, then I mean, again, Hamas is a certain ideology. The Palestinianism that is continuously fighting against Israel is a certain ideology that you have to fight directly, not simply by removing some of its representatives. We didn't get rid of the Nazis or the Japanese Empire because we took out the Nazi Party, or took out the whatever was the representative of the Japanese society. No, we completely crushed the spirit of those nations. We have Marco and Richard back. We still have a little bit of Netanyahu's video left that I want to go to. But first, Marco, I brought up a quote from Yair Lapid, who basically called again for surrender of Israel. But my question sort of would be, not that he is right, but basically if the reason for occupation is just to give it back to Arabs, on some level, you're simply risking the lives of IDF soldiers for almost nothing, since nothing fundamentally will change.
Not only that, but those who died already, who already given their life in order to fight Hamas and trying to rescue their fellow countrymen who was being held by the Gazans, will have died for nothing. I mean, all this this plain step ahead and two backwards that Netanyahu is doing, it's actually disregarding the sacrifice, that the ultimate sacrifice that some of the soldiers and all the soldiers actually are making. They're risking their life for Netanyahu to, I don't know, what is he doing? Who knows? And yes, I mean, you were saying about the Arabs. Well, what Arabs are we talking about? Are we talking people, this civilized UAE, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, who are actually supporting Russia in its war against Ukraine? Who are we talking about? And this assumption that you try to see the good in people when it's not there. You try to project some sort of humanity in these kind of cultures that I'm afraid they are based on the crushing and the slavery of people. They're not. Uh, they don't even consider individual right and freedom as something that should be available to everyone. They're just interested in ultimately controlling their population. That's why they're all either absolute monarchies or dictatorship or all sorts of tyrant that we're seeing. So there's no really point in engaging the Arabs if the Arabs are the cultures that are actually inspiring this kind of violence. I mean, we can pretend here in the West that Islam is a culture of peace, and of course, not every Muslim is a bad person. Obviously, you have people integrating society, even if they believe in different gods or whatever. But the point is that until you have this kind of culture which is alive and kicking and it's fostering this kind of violence, well, you might get together with anyone you like, but ultimately the result is going to be another October the 7th. The Gazans, yes, they're fighting back Hamas. Yeah, right. So you still haven't found a single Gazan that says, "Hang on, guys, those over there are holding the hostages. They're hiding in this place, blah 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 blah," or even help the hostages to escape and return them to the IDF. You haven't seen that happen. In fact, you've seen exactly the opposite. You've seen doctors, nurses, and journalists holding their hostages. I mean, come on.
Yeah. While we were resetting our connection there, I was thinking about why I feel so annoyed to be talking about this subject in this manner. It's because you're being forced to give any level of credence to what is an ill-conceived, ill-defined, impractical plan that's based on woolly wording and has no substance to it whatsoever. And when we talk about the idea that you could hand it over to anyone after 4 or 5 months, and that you would have somehow be ready at that point, that the population of Gaza would be a different beast, have a different ideology, even a fraction of the ideology they currently hold, is for the birds, frankly, isn't it? It annoys me to give any credence whatsoever to discussing the idea of a plan which isn't even a plan. It doesn't merit the term plan. And I think the fact the IDF chief is pointing out some of the practical difficulties and the risks to to his own soldiers, to basically the young men of Israel who are drafted in for the purpose. That is a voice that should be heeded, because his hands are being tied by everything that he's being required the circumstances by which he's being required to carry out such a plan, and to just make it work. And that is setting up for failure. And that failure is a failure that will result in more Israeli bloodshed.
If I could jump in, I mean, that was great, Richard. Thank you. That was kind of what I was getting at. There is no Arab nation that's going to take this over. There is no such thing. This is, and frankly, Netanyahu knows that. This is absolutely a kick the can down the road. This is the goal is to eradicate Hamas. That he's not the primary goal, I believe, of Netanyahu is not to get the hostages back, which frankly, I agree. I think the primary goal has to be to eradicate Hamas. But that eradication of Hamas, Netanyahu has no problem giving up Israeli young people to die in these horrible conditions, fighting these animals. He doesn't mind. And part of that's because he just stays in power. And it is appalling that he is still doing so well in the polls. But frankly, people deserve the government that they elect. But you're absolutely right. This is not, there's no plan here. This is absurdity. And this is just a way for Israel to continue the war and pretend that they're doing it in a way that will spare Gazan civilians who are also captive by Hamas and all this other crap, while putting Israeli lives at risk.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Palestinian population and the way Israel is dealing with it, it's like it's playing the game of like hot potato, but whenever it blows up, it only blows up in Israeli face. Like you have to do something with it. You cannot just try to throw it to somebody else and see if they can figure it out. Because again, when the Palestinian population they have the enemy they want to fight. They have Israel, and that's the enemy they will fight for. Now they'll often when they are living under somebody else, they'll stand up to them. But even if now we of course don't know who the Arab forces that will take over Gaza will be, I assume it would be most likely Saudi Arabia would be involved with coordination with some other nations, possibly, like we said, United Arab Emirates, or most likely even Qatar. So that would be the kind of nations that would be taking care of this. So again, the idea that this will fix anything is ridiculous. But let's well, we're doing a whole hour on 2 minute video, so let's listen to the rest of the well, it's 1 minute, so let's just listen to that.
Today that you will take control of the entire 26-mile Gaza Strip, as it was 20 years ago to this month in 2005.
Well, we don't want to keep it. We want to have a security perimeter. We don't want to govern it. We don't want to be there as a governing body. We want to hand it over to Arab forces that will govern it properly without threatening us and giving Gazans a good life. That's not possible with Hamas. The only way that you're going to have a different future is to get rid of this neo-Nazi army. The Hamas are monsters. Look at what they're doing to our people. Look at what they're doing to the way they massacred, raped, beheaded our people, our men and women, burned our babies. And they are really cruel to their own people, because when we try to take them away from the combat zones, they shoot them. They want people to be civilian casualties. They want a starvation policy that they themselves are trying to put into being. And we're doing everything to reverse that.
Yeah, I'm sure this 1,050th explanation of how Israel is being altruistic and moral when it comes to waging a war will convince the people who want the destruction of Israel to finally, see, oh my God, Israel is actually the good guys here and not the terrorist organization that committed October 7. Marco, do you think this will convince anybody?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see now open everybody is to somebody who's defending himself. I mean, Israel is the size of Greater London in terms of population, but the productivity, the ingenuity, the strength that has shown in the last couple of years is just mind-boggling. I mean, yesterday, Eamon actually made the point that Israel right now is like Britain facing the Nazi Empire by itself before the United States intervened. So it's that kind of level. You have this little country with lions led by right donkeys, I'm afraid. I mean, and most of this interview is actually explaining how the poor Gazans do have to be helped by us. It's like, screw the poor Gazans. They chose that destiny. They chose destruction and death. They attacked Israel. They had peace, but they decided to break it with October the 7th. And by golly, what kind of break or a peace there was. They killed, butchered 1,500 people, and they're still holding some of the 250 hostages. I mean, is that really a population, a culture that you want to conserve, that you want to help? Oh, come on. Let's get real. Let's stop talking about pandering to every single cretin in the West and every single monster in the Middle East, because, well, just give up now. Just say, sorry guys, I've tried. We cannot have a state. Let's pack up. Let's all die, and Macron would be happy.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And when you hear Netanyahu there describing Hamas, describing its brutality, that is obviously true and accurate. But that is completely undone if you're then trying to pretend that Hamas is some entirely separate entity from the Palestinian people, and that the Palestinian people should be rescued from them. You've literally undone the argument there, and it's it's frustrating to see the first half being stressed and then being trashed as an argument by the second half. And I think that's what's happened throughout. And when you hear even hearing the Gaza Strip described accurately as a 26-mile strip, and you realize how tiny it is and how easily it could have been resolved, and yet the impact longer term, not just for Israel, not just for the region, but frankly for the whole world in the process, the whole Western world, and the wrong lessons it's taking from this constantly, which, as you pointed out earlier, Michael, will only lead to more hostage taking, as that's deemed the way to get what you want, including, from Western leaders like Macron and Starmer. Then this 26-mile strip is truly punching above its weight in terms of exposing the stupid altruism and the consequences of that altruism of countries like Israel, which has only led to prolonging this conflict and prolonging the terror for Israelis and for everyone else in other parts of the world who are subject to the terrorism which spreads under the name of pro-Palestine.
Somebody in the chat said something like Israel needs to play the international game. Yeah, if Jews playing the international game in the 30s meant getting genocided because Britain limited influx of or allowing Jews to move into sort of what was called the Mandate of Palestine. So again, this idea, if Jews agree with getting wiped out and killed, then yeah, international community will be okay with that. No, you cannot play the international game. You need to reject it. You cannot allow yourself. Nobody plays the international game, and most countries or sort of most dictatorships are actually getting making use of that, like China, like North Korea, like Iran, like Russia. Now, I'm not saying Israel should be the bad guy, but again, when it comes to the international community, you're talking about what, like 70 or 80% of them are dictatorships. This is who you're appeasing, again, because the West doesn't have any moral fiber in its body to actually stand up for its values. Michael, any more comments on what Netanyahu has said about the innocent Palestinians?
Well, I think that the whole speech was despicable. It really was remarkably stupid. I mean, it's also odd. He's speaking to Fox News. There's a reason he's speaking to Fox News and not CNN or MSNBC or any of the ridiculous. Most of our mainstream media in the U.S. is ridiculous. Fox News, of course, is quite right wing, but it's at least pro-Israel. At the most pro-Israel, it's pro-capitalist, and it's pro-crime control. It's pro-border control. There's a lot of, frankly, pretty commonsensical things that are called, how do you define a country? Some place that has borders and has laws. And it's very much into life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And he's speaking, I don't know why he is speaking to that audience than Fox. It's almost like he was talking to MSNBC people and trying to convince a bunch of, and you'll all pardon the stereotype, but go ahead and look around, purple-haired, unemployed, critics who hate the world and just want handouts and have never created value in their life, never mind held a real job in their life. And I'm being extremely on purpose direct about that, because that's who's out there protesting against everything American and everything Western. And I don't understand that. I don't know where this speech, who it was supposed to do. Anybody in Fox News is wondering, most of us who watch Fox News and with a brain are wondering, who is he talking to? Because we're not that stupid. And why are you trying to paint the Gazans as good people? Nobody believed that the German people in general were good people. They elected Adolf Hitler. They had a normal election and they elected Adolf Hitler. Full stop. Maybe it didn't belong to the Nazi Party officially. Maybe they didn't send their kids to Hitler Youth. But let me give you a hint, folks. The Gazans sent their kids to Gazan Youth. They sent their kids to UN schools that taught how to kill and hate Israelis, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know what this speech was about. I don't know if he thought that was going to sort of make it more palatable to quote occupy Hamas. I think you go in there and say every single ceasefire attempt with this group has failed. We have failed to get the hostages back. We need to destroy them. Done. And that's all he needed to say. Didn't you use the occupy word? He just said we need to destroy them. That's what he should have said, in my opinion. That's what I would have said, and I wouldn't have made any bones about it. Last point. Anybody who thinks they can appease the international community, and you'll pardon me, is just living in an alternate reality. Go ahead and look at the international community. Look at the UN sanctions against Israel, against the number of resolutions against Israel. That is the international community. It is a corrupt, despicable community of people who don't believe in life, don't believe in liberty, and certainly don't believe in the pursuit of happiness. Forget about reason, purpose, and self-esteem on the Ayn Randian side of things. That is not going to work. What people respect in the international community is one thing: strength. It was said a long time ago, right? It's easier to be feared than loved. And Israel always wants to be loved, and what it needs to be is feared. Machiavelli, by the way. I didn't come up with that.
Somebody in the chat said, Daniel just admitted before Israel it was Palestine. Well, you got me there, I guess. It was a mandate for Palestine. That's what the British Crown decided to call that specific region, including the Transjordan, to basically decide what to do with it. And then they decided to create the state of Israel and to create the state of Palestine. But Arabs were like, we'd rather take our chances and try to kill all the Jews and get it bigger. And they lost. So now there is no country of Palestine, but there is a country of Israel. And there never was a country of Palestine because they rejected it and didn't achieve it. Marco, any last thoughts, and where can people find you?
Yeah, funny enough, there isn't a population called Palestinians either. Funny that. Yeah, well, we've seen exactly what Israel is doing here. It's playing the international game, and the international game is sponsored by altruism, the morality that puts somebody else's interests ahead of yours. And if you want to be feared, if you want to put these people into place, showing them the only thing they understand, and which is strength, as Michael just said, well, the only way is not being altruist. Just look after your own interest. And that's ultimately how you achieve purpose and self-esteem and happiness, ultimately. If Israel doesn't start acting in its own interest, exclusively in its own interest, in the interest of its population, making sure that they're safe, they're not under the cosh or the threat of these buffoons in Gaza. These are primitive people living by primitive standards. It's the 27 strip of desert. I mean, are you telling me that Israel, the people who did the Hezbollah pager attack and nearly crippled the Islamic Republic of Iran, couldn't deal with 27 miles of sand and a couple of million terrorists? I mean, come on. If they wanted to, if they finally decided to stop playing the international game and playing the Israeli game, playing the game that means there's going to be peace in the Middle East once and for all, well, you're going to win. But, until you decide to ditch that kind of morality, the morality of altruism, you're never going to get there.
Yeah, because that's what prevents you from fully crushing the enemy, which they've done an enormous amount. We listed them before, didn't we? The Grim Beeper attack, for example, and the wiping out the Hezbollah leadership, going a long way to getting rid of the nuclear capability of Iran, including targeting the scientists that were making it possible for Iran to fire a nuclear weapon against either Israel itself or one of its allies. And I think it's only when Israel properly understands that it has to pursue the complete wipeout of its enemies and prove to all the other enemies that it will wipe you out if you persist in such a route. that it will actually change the dial. I mean, earlier, just before our unscheduled breather in this episode, you were talking about which Israeli politician ought to run the country. But to be honest, that comes so far down the line, doesn't it? What's more important is that each Israeli, and frankly, each thinking Westerner, each intelligent Westerner, actually thinks about the fact that there are hostages there and who is holding them and why haven't they released them, and if they really wanted to end the war, surely they'd release them. And why do you keep why do you only make progress when you wipe out the enemy, and you only lose ground when you stop wiping them out, and you sit back and you say, well, perhaps we should help the enemy now, perhaps we should offer them tents and food instead. I mean, and you then wonder why the war has lasted the 2 years that it has. Well, I mean, the answers are there to anybody who chooses to think, and then who you choose to vote for after that, it becomes, is a totally secondary matter. You've got to consider the issues yourself first, and people need to be more active-minded and less passive when it comes to letting the words and contradictions wash over them unconsidered.
Michael, any last thoughts from you, and where can people find you? And well, first, Mark and Richard, did you say where can people find you?
I didn't, but I can now. It's the Briefly Objective, sister show to this. Links in the description below for short form material. Click there, and you've got lots of short form videos all about Israel and the conflict. And please watch them, like them, subscribe.
Michael, any last thoughts, and where can people find you?
Real quick, I know we're a bit over. It is remarkable to me how, and it is in the name of altruism and for some reason feeling bad for adults who are largely of free mind to make their own choices. Remarkable to me how the world supports the most destitute, despicable, non-contributing. Not only are they negative, they're not even zeros, folks. These are negative contributing societies. When was time a reasonably neutral society like Saudi Arabia contributed anything of value to the progress of humanity besides gasoline or oil? Mostly oil that can be refined. And the answer is not. No. And yet Israel, which is in America and many countries in Europe, Eastern and Western Europe and so on, have contributed a lot to the world. And yet these countries that are the most despicable and destitute somehow get a free pass. Not only do we get a free pass, but we get a gun to our head in the West to contribute our tax dollars to their increasing anti-Western, anti-meritocracy, anti-progress attitudes. It baffles the mind, and it comes from this stupidity of altruism taught in our junior high schools and universities. Michael Kaufman, 2Fs on LinkedIn.
And with that, we have one more super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. She says, thank you for any important show, October 25th, 26th. And of course, she's talking about the irreplaceable Spark Conference. Make sure to check out objectivism.co.uk for our conference in Southern California, specifically Orange County, California. Michael Kaufman will be one of the speakers there, so make sure to join us, and we'll see you tomorrow with another episode of the Daily Objective and the Reality Show. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye.